It began on a quiet night at the edge of the Milky Way, in a place so far from starlight that darkness seemed endless, where even the oldest machines had forgotten how to hum. For centuries, that part of the galaxy had been silent. No ships, no travelers, no beacons, nothing but the slow whisper of time. The galaxy had moved on, building new cities, forming new alliances, and burying its past deep beneath the dust of forgotten wars. And yet, on that quiet night, something ancient woke up. A faint sound cracked through the void, a rhythm so small it almost went unnoticed, a single pulse repeating every 7 seconds. It wasn't natural. It wasn't a star or an echo. It was a signal. A voice that had been waiting too long to be heard. The Galactic Council received it first, hidden deep within the data stream of a mining relay station orbiting an uninhabited moon. At first, the technicians ignored it, thinking it was interference from the old human channels that littered space. But when the frequency stabilized, the computer flagged it as classified. Moments later, every screen across the observation deck flashed red with a single message, SOS, Earth Command Omega, requesting immediate retrieval. The words appeared in an old Terran code, a language no one had used in over 2 centuries. The young alien operator stared at the screen, his voice trembling. Earth Command? That's impossible. Earth was purged. His supervisor, an older Andrelian with steel-gray eyes, stepped closer, frowning. Run it again, he ordered. The signal repeated, same pattern, same code, same human signature. The room fell silent. For a long moment, no one moved, as if the air itself had grown heavy. Inform the council, the supervisor finally said. Now. Within hours, the signal was echoing across the highest levels of the galactic government. The council convened in the great chamber of Verelion Prime, a colossal ring of light floating above the city's core. Holographic projections of 50 alien species filled the hall, their faces tense, their voices sharp with unease. We are certain it's human, asked one, her voice smooth and cold. Without a doubt, another replied. The encryption matches pre-purged Terran military protocol, Omega clearance. Only the top level of Earth Command could send it. A low murmur spread through the chamber. The last time that code had been used, the galaxy had nearly torn itself apart. Hundreds of years ago, before the purge, humans had been everywhere, building colonies, shaping alliances, spreading like wildfire. But they had also been feared. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when cornered, when threatened, when betrayed. They didn't just fight wars. They ended them. And when the Great Purge came, when every empire united to erase them, humanity didn't beg. They vanished. Every human world went dark within a week. Every ship disappeared from radar, every outpost abandoned. It was as if an entire species had chosen silence over surrender. For 200 years, that silence had haunted the stars. And now, that silence was broken. The signal is coming from the Sol system, said the technician nervously. From the moon's dark side. The room went cold. No one had spoken the name of that system in a long time. That's impossible, one of the counselors hissed. The moon was glassed during the purge. Nothing survived. And yet something did, came the reply. Something that remembers. Outside the chamber windows, the great city of Verelion Prime shone like a jewel suspended in endless black. But within the hearts of its rulers, a shadow had begun to grow. Old fears, long buried, stirred again. One of the older counselors leaned forward, his wrinkled hands shaking. You all know what this means, he said softly. The last time humans sent an SOS under Omega clearance, 3 empires burned. The words hung in the air like a curse. Across the galaxy, the signal continued, steady, unchanging, relentless. It traveled through old networks, through forgotten satellites, through derelict human outposts that hadn't seen light in centuries. It reached the ruins of Mars, where silent machines still stood guard over dust-covered cities. It reached the asteroid colonies, where old weapons waited in deep storage vaults, their lights flickering faintly for the first time in ages. And deep beneath the frozen surface of the moon, buried under layers of steel and ice, something ancient stirred. The base was called Silent Dawn, built in the final years before humanity disappeared. It had been meant as a failsafe, a place of last defense, and then it had been sealed forever, until now. The SOS reached its main antenna, and for the first time in 200 years, the power grid came alive. Red lights flickered in dark hallways. Dust swirled as dormant machines began to hum again. Deep in the command chamber, screens blinked awake, one after another, showing data streams that hadn't been touched since the fall. The central AI, Vigil Core, came online with a soft electronic sigh. Its first words echoed through the control deck, reactivation protocol confirmed. Threat level, galactic. Authorization code recognized. Awakening sequence initiated. Far below the surface, inside a vast cryogenic chamber, hundreds of human soldiers slept inside reinforced pods. Their uniforms bore the insignia of Earth Command, their faces peaceful, unaware of how much time had passed. One pod hissed as frost melted from its edges. Inside, a woman's eyes fluttered open. Her name was Admiral Juno Reeves, once the youngest fleet commander of the Terran Defense Armada. She gasped as oxygen rushed into her lungs, her chest rising for the first time in centuries. The pod opened with a metallic groan. Cold mist spilled into the air as she stepped out, her body trembling, her mind racing to catch up with what she was seeing. "System report," she croaked. The I's voice filled the room. "Admiral Reeves, you are 204 years, 6 months, and 12 days overdue for reactivation. The galaxy's signal confirms emergency distress beacon. Human origin, Omega code." She froze. "Omega? That's Earth Command Protocol. Who sent it?" "Unknown," the AI replied. "Signal originates from outside Terran space. Containment breach of classified channels suspected." Juno looked around at the rows of cryopods still sealed beside her, each holding someone she once commanded. Old friends. Old soldiers. People who had chosen to sleep instead of surrender. "Wake them," she said. "All of them." The AI hesitated for half a second, then began the sequence. One by one, pods began to hiss open, the chamber filling with fog and light as the sleeping warriors of Earth returned. Juno staggered to the main console, her gloved hand brushing over the dusty control screen. The last command log flickered onto the display, humanity terminated. Earth offline. Project Silent Fleet sealed. She stared at it, her eyes burning. "Not anymore," she whispered. "We're awake." Up above, hidden beneath the surface of the moon, massive doors began to shift. Centuries of ice cracked apart as ancient hangars opened to the vacuum of space. Inside those hangars slept ships, huge, black, and silent, their hulls made of alloys that even the strongest alien sensors could never detect. They were relics of an age when humanity had been both feared and respected. Ships that had once patrolled every border of known space. Ships that had been built not just for war, but for survival. The lights inside their cores began to glow. Engines that had not burned in generations roared quietly to life, humming with deep energy. One ship, larger than the rest, powered on fully, its name etched faintly across its hull, Vigilant Dawn. Its reactors pulsed with blue light, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Juno stood at the viewing deck, staring at the vessel that had once been her flagship. "Status report," she ordered. "Fleet operational at 63%. Weapons offline. Communications restricted. Awaiting command input," the AI replied. "Then hear me, Vigil Core," she said, her voice steady now. "The galaxy forgot us. They thought we died. But someone called us. Someone still remembers. And we're going to answer." The base trembled as the first engines ignited, sending ripples of light through the cratered landscape. From space, it looked as if the moon itself had come alive. Old satellites caught the sudden power surge and relayed it outward. Across the galaxy, the Council's sensors exploded with readings. "We're detecting movement in the Sol system," one officer stammered. "Massive energy spikes from the moon's surface." "That's impossible," the Council leader shouted. "That planet is dead." But it wasn't dead. Not anymore. Deep within its shadowed heart, humanity had begun to breathe again. As the first of the awakened soldiers gathered on the control deck, Juno raised her eyes to the stars. Somewhere out there, a human voice had called for help. Somewhere out there, a piece of their history had survived. "Set course for the source of that signal," she said. "We're going home." The engines roared as the vigilant dawn lifted off from the moon's surface, breaking through centuries of silence. The dust of the past scattered in its wake, and the light of its thrusters burned across the black. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity had not been destroyed. It had been waiting, sleeping beneath the ice and stars, listening for the moment the galaxy would forget its fear. Now, with one echo of an old SOS, the sleeping giants had risen. And for the first time in 200 years, the universe remembered the sound of human power. The signal that shouldn't exist had done what no army ever could. It had awakened the secret fleet of Earth. And as the vigilant dawn vanished into the dark, the galaxy trembled, because deep in their hearts, they all knew the same truth. The silence of humanity was never peace. It was a warning. The engines of the vigilant dawn thundered like a heartbeat after centuries of silence, rumbling through the vacuum of space as dust and fragments of frozen metal scattered across the moon's surface. Inside the command deck, Admiral Juno Reeves stood at the viewing pane, watching the Earth rise over the horizon, half shrouded in shadow, half bathed in sunlight, a scarred but still living world that had been left behind. Her gloved hands tightened around the railing as she whispered to herself, 200 years, and she's still standing. Around her, the command crew stumbled through their first waking moments, their bodies stiff from cryo-sleep, their memories catching up to a galaxy that had forgotten them. Some faces were old friends she never thought she'd see again. Others were new, reconstructed from digital consciousness backups, fragments of human minds brought back into form by the AI to fill the missing ranks. "All systems online," reported Lieutenant Kara Voss, her voice trembling with both exhaustion and awe. "Main power restored. Engines stable. Cryo bays clearing. We have, Admiral, we have 7 ships awakening." Juno turned, her expression sharp yet filled with something like grief. "Name them." Kara's eyes darted between screens as she read the glowing words aloud, her voice steadying with each one. Vigilant Dawn, Iron Rain, Horizon Spear, Archangel, Nemesis, Oathbreaker, and Solace. The names hung in the air like ghosts returning to life, each one a reminder of a different chapter of humanity's old wars. Juno closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the captains who once commanded them. Men and women who had fought till the end, who had chosen silence over surrender. "Reactivate long-range scanners," Juno said, stepping forward, her boots echoing against the metal floor. "I want to know who called us and why." The Ari's voice filled the deck, calm and deep, carrying a strange hint of reverence. "Signal origin confirmed, Sector Epsilon 9. Former Terran colony. Estimated distance, 31,000 light-years. Distress type, planetary extinction event." Juno's heart sank. How long has the signal been active? 2 years, 6 months, 14 days. 2 years. Kara whispered. "They've been calling for help for 2 years. Juno's gaze turned toward the stars. And no one answered. She looked at her crew, human faces lit by the soft glow of the monitors, faces that had been frozen in time while the rest of the universe moved on. "We'll answer now," she said quietly, "because that's what we were built for." A murmur of agreement rippled through the deck. Some soldiers smiled weakly. Others simply stared ahead, trying to believe this was real. They had fallen asleep expecting death and woken to a new war. In the silence that followed, one of the younger officers, barely 20 when she went into cryo, spoke softly. "Admiral, what if the galaxy doesn't want us back?" Juno turned to her, her voice firm but gentle. "Then they'll have to live with it. We're not coming back as conquerors. We're coming back as the consequence of what they did." Outside the viewport, the other ships were rising now, hulking silhouettes emerging from the moon's craters, their hulls glowing faintly as engines flared to life. They looked like sleeping gods rising from their graves, silent and patient, their presence enough to shake the stars themselves. The communication console beeped as new data came in, old human encryption logs, the kind that hadn't been used since before the purge. Juno leaned over the display and saw a line of text appear across the screen. If you can hear us, we never stopped believing. She exhaled slowly, her eyes softening. Whoever you are, we heard you. Then she straightened. Prep for jump sequence. Admiral, Kara said hesitantly, the drive hasn't been tested in centuries. It could destabilize the entire core. Then we stabilize it, Juno said simply. If humanity waited 200 years for a response, I'm not going to make them wait another minute. The Eye's voice interrupted. Power output exceeding safe parameters. Recommend delaying hyperspace activation until fleet synchronization complete. Override, Juno said. We jump now. The floor vibrated as the reactors surged, blue light flooding the deck. The crew gripped their stations as gravity fluctuated, systems flickering under the strain. Then the stars outside stretched into long lines of white light, and the fleet vanished into the dark, leaving behind the silent moon and a planet that still waited for its children to return. For a few moments, there was nothing but motionless void and the sound of the engines roaring like thunder through eternity. Inside the ship, time bent and twisted, the jump drive forcing reality itself to stretch open. The humans held on as the light swallowed everything. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The darkness around them calmed. The stars snapped back into focus. Jump complete, Kara breathed, her hands shaking. We're in Epsilon Sector. Juno exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Status. Minor damage to the Iron Rain's port engine. Fleet synchronization successful. No losses. Visuals, Juno ordered. The main screen flared to life, and what they saw froze everyone where they stood. Epsilon 9 hung before them, a blue and green world now half devoured by fire. Massive alien ships swarmed its atmosphere like locusts, tearing through its defenses, burning cities to ash. The ground was littered with wreckage, human architecture, ancient but familiar. The SOS signal was still pulsing from the planet's northern hemisphere, a tiny flicker of light surrounded by chaos. Magnify the signal source, Juno said. The image zoomed in, a small settlement built around a human colony tower, its banners torn, its shields barely holding. A group of figures, non-human, maybe the descendants of settlers, were fighting desperately against the invaders. Juno recognized the ships attacking them, the Dravik swarm, a parasitic species that consumed technology, energy, and flesh alike. They were the monsters that had haunted the edges of space long before the Council rose. Admiral, Kara said quietly, if the swarm is here, the Council won't lift a finger. I know, Juno replied. They'll watch. They'll wait. That's what they always do. Her voice hardened. But we're not them. The AI spoke again, its tone colder now. Weapons offline. Power reserves limited. Engaging this threat without full systems will expose the fleet. We don't need full systems, Juno said, her voice turning into a whisper filled with conviction. We just need to remind them who we are. She turned toward her crew, her eyes fierce beneath the dim lights. Bring weapons online manually. Prepare the vigilant dawn for descent. Signal the fleet. We engage at dawn. The command deck erupted in motion. Alarms rang softly, lights flashed, and the hum of machinery filled the air as men and women who had been frozen for centuries suddenly found purpose again. Across the fleet, captains activated ancient weapons by hand, calibrating systems that hadn't been touched in lifetimes. Inside the hangars, drones came alive, unfolding like metallic wings, their targeting sensors flaring red. Outside, the human ships began to reposition, forming a silent wall above the burning planet. Juno stood at the center of it all, her gaze fixed on the world below. She could almost hear the voices of the people sending that desperate call. The fear, the hope, the faith that someone out there still cared. Admiral, Kara said, her voice softer now. It's been so long. Do you really think the galaxy remembers us? Juno didn't answer right away. She stared at the planet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said quietly, "They don't need to remember. We'll remind them." Outside, the vigilant Dawn's engines flared brighter than any star. The ships behind it aligned in formation, their black hulls reflecting the light of the burning world. For the first time in centuries, the sky of Epsilon 9 would see something it had only heard about in stories. A fleet of human warships cutting through darkness, carrying vengeance, mercy, and the unyielding will of a species that refused to die. And as the first blast doors opened, revealing the glowing cores of weapons once feared across the stars, Admiral Juno Reeves gave the order that would shake the galaxy awake. "For Earth," she said softly. "For everyone they left behind." The ships moved as one, silent as ghosts, unstoppable as dawn, and in that moment, the galaxy began to remember what it had chosen to forget. The sound of humanity returning to war. The sky above Epsilon 9 burned red as the vigilant Dawn cut through the clouds like a blade from legend, her engines roaring against the endless storm of fire. The Dravik swarm had already covered half the planet, their ships black as oil, their movements like a sea of hunger spreading across the horizon. On the ground, the last of the colony defenders huddled behind ruined walls, their weapons cracked and low on charge, their voices trembling as they listened to the sound that grew louder with every passing second. The deep, rising thunder of engines unlike anything they had ever heard. Commander Lethra, the alien leader who had sent the SOS months ago, staggered to her feet as her aide shouted, "They're coming through the atmosphere." She looked up through the smoke-filled sky and froze. What she saw didn't make sense. Massive triangular ships pierced through the storm clouds, black and gleaming, each one carrying the ancient emblem of the Terran flag. The ground shook as sonic booms rolled across the landscape. The Dravik paused their advance, their hive minds flickering with sudden confusion. The humans had returned. In the command deck of the Vigilant Dawn, Admiral Juno Reeves stood at the front window, her eyes cold and focused. "Status," she said quietly. "Fleet positioned in high orbit," Kara replied. "Weapons charged. Atmospheric entry stable. Enemy numbers, too many to count." Juno's gaze hardened. "Then we'll start counting their ashes." The Ari's voice hummed through the ship, calm as always. "Warning, engaging swarm at this magnitude risks full exposure to the Galactic Council." Juno gave a faint smile. "Good. Let them watch." Outside, the fleet spread its wings across the sky, 7 ships forming a line that glowed against the dying planet's light. The first Dravik warform, a beast-sized carrier made of living metal, turned its maw toward the humans, opening to unleash plasma fire. But before it could even release the first blast, the Vigilant Dawn fired. A beam of blue-white energy lanced from its underbelly, slicing the creature in half. The explosion rippled through the clouds, turning night into day. On the ground, Lethra fell to her knees, covering her eyes as fire rained from above. When the light faded, the swarm's carrier was gone. Only drifting ash and molten fragments remained. She whispered, barely believing her own voice, "That can't be real. That's human technology. That's ancient human technology." Her aide trembled. "Commander," they answered us. Humans answered the call. The words spread through the defenders' ranks like a shockwave. Those who had been moments from surrender now stood taller, their fear replaced by something fierce, something alive. The galaxy had told them humans were myths. Now the myths were burning gods. In orbit, Juno watched as more swarm clusters rose from the planet's surface, darkening the stars like a wave of insects. "All ships," she commanded. "Form up and clear a path through the swarm. Use the Dawn's plasma grid for cover fire. No transmissions. No warnings. We strike in silence." Her crew nodded without hesitation. These were soldiers born of a world that had already died once. Fear was a luxury they buried centuries ago. The fleet dove into the storm, their engines leaving streaks of white fire through the dark. From above, it looked like angels descending into hell. Inside the colony, Lethra's scanners lit up as the human ships broke the atmosphere. "They're not even using shields," her aide whispered. "How are they surviving?" "Because they don't fight to survive," Lethra said softly, watching in awe. "They fight to end it." On board the Iron Rain, Captain Ilarajune's voice came over the comm line. Admiral, we've got swarm clusters approaching from the western orbit. Recommend flanking pattern Theta 9. Approved, Juno said. Execute at will. The Iron Rain veered left, her side cannons igniting in synchronized bursts, cutting through thousands of swarm drones like paper. The Horizon Spear followed close behind, deploying orbital mines that detonated in radiant arcs of light, shredding the enemy ranks. Below, the people of Epsilon 9 could only watch as the sky erupted into a storm of fire and light. Children clung to their parents, soldiers paused in disbelief, and for the first time in generations, someone whispered a word that had not been spoken aloud in over 200 years: humans. The Dravik swarm began to retreat, their hive signals fracturing, unable to process the magnitude of what they were facing. They had conquered dozens of worlds, consumed civilizations, and broken fleets, but they had never fought something that refused to communicate, negotiate, or plead. Humanity fought in silence, and that silence was terrifying. Inside the vigilant dawn, alarms blared as the ship's main cannon overheated. Sparks flew across the bridge. Admiral, power cells at critical, Kara warned. We're running too hot. Juno gritted her teeth. Then run hotter. She pressed her hand to the control console, overriding safety locks. Channel auxiliary from life support. We finish this now. That'll drop oxygen levels below 30%, Kara protested. So hold your breath, Juno said. The ship shuddered as all power surged to the main cannon. The blue glow intensified, building into a single, blinding pulse. Target the swarm command node, Juno ordered. The eye's tone deepened. Coordinates locked. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The beam fired, silent, endless, and absolute. It pierced through the clouds, through the swarm's core, through the very air, tearing a hole into the sky. The sound came after, a deep, distant thunder that shook the ground for miles. On the surface, Lethra and her soldiers watched as the entire swarm command ship erupted into light, dissolving into nothingness. For a few seconds, there was no movement, no sound, no war. Just the faint whisper of wind carrying ash. Then cheers erupted. Soldiers screamed in triumph, voices hoarse with disbelief. The radio channels filled with tears and laughter, the sound of hope reborn. Lethra looked up, her eyes full of light. They came, she whispered. After all this time, they came. In orbit, Juno stared at the readings, 0 swarm signatures, full planetary victory. The silence in the command deck was heavy, emotional, almost sacred. Then, slowly, one by one, her crew began to clap. No words, no celebration, just the sound of hands striking metal, a rhythm that spoke of pride, pain, and a sense of belonging they had lost for centuries. Juno raised her hand, stopping them gently. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet but carried the weight of history. Mark this day, she said. The day humanity answered a call no one else would. The day we stopped being ghosts. Kara's eyes glistened. Admiral, what happens now? Juno turned to the window, watching the fires fade below. Now, she said softly, now the galaxy remembers. As the fleet drifted above Epsilon 9, the last transmissions from the planet began to spread across the galaxy. Grainy footage of black ships cutting through fire, human banners fluttering once more. The Council would see it. Every empire that had ever buried Earth's name would see it. And every tyrant that had once feared humanity would feel the same cold shiver crawl up their spine. Because the humans were not extinct. They were awake. They were watching. And the SOS that had started as a whisper in the dark had now become a warning to the stars. Humanity never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to rise again. The sky above Epsilon 9 was quiet now, but it was the kind of quiet that carried weight. The silence that follows thunder, the stillness that comes after something too powerful to name. Smoke curled through the air where the Dravik swarm had fallen, their ships still burning as ash drifted across the ruined cities. The once green world had turned gray, yet beneath the destruction, there was something new, life, hope, the faint sound of voices no longer crying but whispering in disbelief. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy had felt it. High above the planet, the Vigilant Dawn drifted in orbit, her hull scorched from battle, her engines glowing faintly against the void. Inside, the corridors were alive again, crew members moving with purpose, engineers repairing systems that had slept for centuries, soldiers sitting silently in the mess hall, staring at holograms of the world below. For many, this was their first sunrise in 200 years. Admiral Juno Reeves walked the command deck slowly, her gaze fixed on the star-filled window before her. Every breath she took felt heavy with memory. She could still see the flashes of battle behind her eyes, still hear the hum of the ship's core trembling with power, still smell the faint trace of ozone after the plasma cannons had fired. Kara Voss stood at her console, her voice low. Casualty reports coming in from the ground, Admiral. The colony's survivors number less than 4,000. Infrastructure, gone. Atmospheric filters failing. They won't last long without aid. Juno turned her head slightly. Prepare the Iron Rain to drop supplies. And send a message to the fleet. We stay in orbit until those people are safe. Kara hesitated. Admiral, the Council will know we're back by now. Every sensor in the galaxy must have picked up that battle. Juno's expression didn't change. Good. Let them see. Let them remember what happens when humanity is cornered. On the planet's surface, Commander Lethra stood in the middle of what had once been her command post. The fire had died out, the wind scattering the ashes of the swarm. She looked up at the sky, where the silhouettes of 7 ships glowed faintly like distant gods. Around her, survivors worked to gather the wounded, their faces dirty but alive. One of her soldiers said softly, pointing upward. They are still here. Lethra smiled weakly. They came back for us. Don't ever forget that. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She had prayed to the stars for help, sent that signal out into a galaxy that had stopped listening, and somehow, the ghosts of Earth had answered. Inside the council chamber on Varelian Prime, panic spread like fire. The delegates shouted over one another, voices cracking in fear. They've destroyed an entire swarm armada, cried one. They've vaporized them in minutes. Another slammed a clawed hand on the table. You said they were extinct. The council chair, a tall being with crystalline skin, slammed his gavel down. Order! Order! Damn it! The room fell silent, but the fear didn't fade. On the central screen, footage from Epsilon 9 played, human ships cutting through the swarm, beams of light tearing the sky apart. The chair's voice trembled. What we feared has come true. Humanity lives. An old Tarkhan elder leaned forward, his tone cold and trembling. You fools should have let them be. You purged their world, and they went quiet. Did you never wonder why they stayed silent for so long? A younger delegate scoffed. Because they were dead. The elder turned slowly, his eyes dark. No, he said. Because they were preparing. The words echoed through the chamber like thunder. We must contact them immediately, someone shouted. We must negotiate before it's too late. The chair shook his head. You don't negotiate with ghosts that remember being betrayed. Back aboard the Vigilant Dawn, the crew gathered in the observation bay. Through the glass, they watched the colony lights flicker to life again. Makeshift fires burned in the ruins, people huddled together, waving toward the sky. They think we're angels, one of the engineers murmured. We're not angels, Juno said softly behind them. We're what they made us. She walked past, her reflection crossing the window like a shadow of the old world. Later, she stood alone in her quarters, staring at an old photograph she'd taken from her cryopod. It showed a blue planet, half covered in clouds, the word home scrawled on the back in her own handwriting. She closed her eyes, remembering the last day before the purge. The burning skies of Earth, the evacuation orders, the screams of cities falling under alien fire. They had sealed themselves away under the moon with one promise. If anyone ever calls for help again, humanity will answer. And tonight, they had kept that promise. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Admiral, came Kara's voice over the incoming transmission from the colony. Juno straightened. Patch it through. The holographic screen lit up, revealing Commander Lethra, her face tired but resolute. "Admiral Reeves," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't know me, but I was raised on stories of your people. We thought you were legends. Tonight, you saved us. I don't have words strong enough to thank you." Juno smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank us, Commander. You sent a call for help. We heard it. Then you're really from Earth?" Lethra asked quietly. Juno looked down for a moment before meeting her gaze. "From what's left of it." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lethra said softly, "What happens now?" Juno looked out the viewport again. "Now, we rebuild. Together." The transmission ended, but the words lingered. Hours later, Juno stood once more on the bridge as the fleet's lights dimmed to standby. The crew was exhausted, but no one wanted to sleep. "Admiral," Kara said quietly, "the AI has something." The Vigil Corps' voice filled the deck. "Incoming encrypted message from an unknown relay. Human frequency detected." Juno froze. "From way?" "Unknown origin. Signal signature matches Sol network." The entire deck went silent. Every head turned toward her. "Sol network doesn't exist anymore," Kara whispered. "It was destroyed with Earth." Juno's heart pounded. "Play it." Static filled the room for several seconds. Then a voice broke through, old, weary, human. "To any surviving Terran command units, if you can hear this, you were never forgotten. Earth stands. Repeat, Earth stands." The bridge erupted in gasps. Juno gripped the console, her breath catching. "That's impossible," Kara whispered. "Earth was wiped out." Juno's voice came out low, almost breaking. "No, it survived." She turned toward her crew, her eyes shining with something no one had seen in centuries: hope. "Set course for Sol." The crew stared at her in disbelief, then one by one began nodding. The engines hummed softly as the fleet began to turn, aligning with the coordinates of humanity's birthplace. Outside, the stars shifted, the light of Epsilon 9 fading behind them. Commander Lethra watched from the ground, tears glimmering in her eyes as the ships ascended higher and higher until they became nothing but points of light in the sky. "Good luck, my human friends," she whispered. "May the stars remember your name." And as the vigilant dawn accelerated into the endless black, the galaxy trembled again. Somewhere, deep in the void between worlds, ancient systems stirred. Old satellites flickered awake. The long-dead heartbeat of Earth was starting to echo again, faint but unstoppable. The Council watched from afar, terrified. The universe had mocked humanity, buried their name, erased their memory. But now their forgotten children were returning home. And this time, the stars themselves would bear witness. The stars bent into streaks of silver as the vigilant dawn tore through the dark, the engines of the forgotten fleet whispering against the silence of space. For days they had traveled in near silence, crossing systems that had long forgotten the name of Earth. The old navigation charts no longer matched what they saw. The stars had moved, colonies vanished, empires risen and fallen. Yet through it all, the fleet pressed on, drawn by that one impossible message that still echoed in their logs: Earth stands. On the bridge, Admiral Juno Reeves stood motionless before the great viewport, her reflection staring back at her like a ghost of an older world. Her hands rested on the console, fingers brushing against the faded Terran insignia etched into the metal. Kara Voss approached quietly, her voice hushed as if afraid to disturb the silence. "We're entering Sol's outer boundary, Admiral." Juno nodded slightly. "Any confirmation on the signal's source?" Kara checked her readings, her brow furrowed. "It's coming from Earth's orbit, but the frequency isn't military. It's faint, almost like an echo." The I's voice came through next, its tone calm but uncertain. "Caution advised. There are no registered satellites or colonies in Sol system. All records classify this region as lifeless." Juno's gaze didn't waver. "And yet something called us home." As the fleet slowed, the stars ahead of them began to fade, replaced by the pale curve of a blue and white world. The bridge crew went still. "Is that One whispered, unable to finish. Juno exhaled softly. Earth. The planet filled the viewport, beautiful, scarred, and silent. Massive rings of debris still orbited it, the remains of ancient battleships and shattered stations that once protected humanity's heart. Below, the continents were cracked and burned, vast cities reduced to ruins, yet patches of green glimmered faintly through the haze of clouds. Against all odds, life had returned. Kara's voice trembled. After everything, she's still alive. Juno nodded, her eyes glassy with memories she'd buried centuries ago. She always was. We just stopped listening. The eye's sensors flickered. Admiral, multiple power sources detected on the planet's surface, non-natural. Coordinates transmitting. Juno leaned forward. On screen. The image zoomed in on a vast scar running through what had once been North America. Deep in the heart of the wasteland, structures gleamed under the weak sunlight. Metal towers, active energy grids, faint signals pulsing from underground. Kara's hands shook. That's impossible. Those readings are human. Juno's voice turned quiet but fierce. Prepare descent sequence. We're going home. As the vigilant dawn entered the atmosphere, flames licked across its hull, breaking through layers of ash and dust that hung like fog around the planet. Through the haze, the crew could see the ruins of cities, collapsed skyscrapers half buried in sand, dried oceans stretching like scars across the surface. But then, beyond the wreckage, light appeared. The ship emerged above a massive valley where a new city stood, shining beneath the clouds. Towers built from both human steel and alien alloys rose from the ground, their design strange yet familiar. On the streets below, people looked up, humans, unmistakably human, though their clothing and machines were older, patched together from fragments of lost ages. They stopped in the middle of the streets as the shadow of the vigilant dawn passed over them, mouths open, eyes wide in disbelief. For them, the sky had been empty for centuries. For them, humanity's fleets were myths told to children before bed. Juno stared down at them, her heart pounding. They survived, she whispered. Kara's eyes filled with tears. Admiral, they're signaling. They recognize our transponder. Patch them through, Juno said softly. The screen flickered, then steadied. An older man appeared, his hair gray, his uniform faded but proudly bearing the old Terran crest. His voice cracked with emotion. This is General Elias Ward of the Earth Restoration Command. If you're receiving this, welcome home. The bridge fell silent. Juno couldn't speak for several seconds. She took a step closer to the hologram, her throat tightening. General Ward, how is this possible? He smiled sadly. Barely. We built what we could from what the Council left us. The purge didn't kill everyone, Admiral. Some of us hid, beneath the cities, in the shadows of old bunkers. We rebuilt, piece by piece. We waited for the day the sky would burn again. His voice broke as he continued. When your signal returned, we thought it was a dream. We thought the dead were calling us. The bridge crew watched in silence, some crying, others smiling through tears. Juno's voice softened, carrying the ache of 2 centuries. You sent the message. We found your old network buried under the ice caps, Ward said. We activated it in desperation. We never thought anyone would still be listening. Juno nodded, her hand tightening on the console. We never stopped listening. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the engines and the faint crackle of the hologram filled the air. Finally, Ward spoke again. Admiral, the galaxy has changed. The Council still rules the core worlds. They've erased every trace of us. But if you're truly back, he paused, his voice lowering, they won't let you exist. They'll come for you. Juno's eyes hardened. Then they'll find we're not the same humans they tried to destroy. Kara stepped closer, lowering her voice. Admiral, what if we start another war? Juno looked at her, tired, resolute. It won't be us who starts it, Kara. But if the galaxy wants to test what we've become, they'll remember why they feared us in the first place. On the planet below, Crowds gathered beneath the landing platform as the vigilant dawn descended, its engines roaring like thunder over the ruins of the old world. People fell to their knees, shielding their eyes as the ship settled, its massive shadow stretching across the valley. The ramp lowered, steam rising in the cold air, and Admiral Juno Reeves stepped out, her boots touching Earth's soil for the first time in 200 years. She looked around, at the broken mountains, at the flickering lights of a reborn civilization, at faces filled with awe and disbelief, and for a moment, her breath caught. Kara followed behind her, whispering, "You're really home, Admiral." Juno nodded, her eyes wet. "No," she said quietly. "We're home." General Ward approached with his officers, his eyes shining with emotion. He saluted sharply. "We thought we were the last," he said. Juno returned the salute. "So did we." She looked at the crowd behind him. Farmers, children, engineers, survivors, and saw in them the same stubborn fire that had once burned in her people. "You rebuilt," she said softly. "You kept the light burning." "We did what we could," Ward said. "But the stars turned their backs on us." Juno's gaze drifted upward to the sky. "Then we'll turn them back toward us." That night, as the fleet rested above Earth, fires burned on the ground, not of destruction but of celebration. Music rose from the valley, old songs from a forgotten world carried by new voices. The soldiers of the Vigilant Dawn stood among their descendants, sharing stories of the time before the Purge, stories that felt like dreams come to life. Children touched the soldiers' armor in wonder, asking if the stars were still beautiful. Juno knelt before one little girl, her voice soft. "They are beautiful again," she said. Later, alone under the open sky, Juno looked up at the constellations. She could still hear the hum of her ship above, feel the distant pulse of her crew sleeping in orbit. The Ari's voice came through her earpiece, quiet and almost human. "Admiral, sensors detect multiple warp signatures entering Sol system. Unknown vessels, Council configuration." Juno didn't move. She just stared at the stars, her expression calm, her heart steady. "They found us," she whispered. "Yes," said the AI. "What are your orders?" Juno smiled faintly. "Prepare the fleet. If they came to see what remains of humanity, we'll show them." And as the first Council warships appeared on the edge of the system, their lights cold and watchful, the hidden strength of Earth awakened once more. Deep beneath the crust, old silos rumbled, buried satellites powered up, and across the surface, the people of Earth lifted their eyes toward the sky, unafraid. The galaxy had forgotten who they were, but the moment those ships crossed into Sol, they would remember. Humanity was no longer the hunted. Humanity was the storm waiting to be unleashed. The first Council warships entered Sol like silver knives cutting through black water, their hulls shining with arrogance and fear. For the first time in centuries, alien ships approached Earth not as explorers, but as witnesses to something they could not understand. From the command bridge of the Vigilant Dawn, Admiral Juno Reeves watched the sensor screens fill with contacts, dozens, then hundreds. Kara Voss stood beside her, her voice tight. They came in force. At least 2 dreadnoughts, multiple escorts, and a diplomatic vessel at the center. "They're not here to talk, they're here to measure us." Juno didn't move, her hands resting calmly on the console. "Then let them take their measurements. Let them see what silence built." The Ari's voice came next, deep and steady. "Incoming transmission from the Council flagship. Message priority, demand." Juno gave a faint smile. "Of course it's a demand. Patch them through." A blue hologram flared in front of her, taking the shape of a tall, crystalline being with sharp eyes and a voice that sounded like wind cutting through glass. "This is Counselor Revek of the Galactic Council," he began. "You are operating an unauthorized fleet using forbidden Terran military technology. Identify yourselves and surrender your vessels immediately." Juno stared at him, unblinking. "Admiral Juno Reeves, Earth Command Omega. You must be very new to this galaxy if you think you can order humanity to kneel." The Counselor's voice grew sharper. "Humanity no longer exists. The purge was final." Juno leaned forward, her voice calm but cold. Then consider this your update. Humanity exists. And we remember exactly who tried to erase us. For a moment, Revek said nothing. Behind him, the council delegates whispered, clearly shaken by her tone, by her face, by the very fact that humans still looked them in the eye. You risk war, he finally said. Juno's expression didn't change. War implies that you can win. The transmission cut off. Silence filled the bridge, the kind that carried a storm behind it. Kara exhaled softly. That went well. Juno looked out at the stars. They wanted proof we survived. We'll give it to them. Outside, the human fleet began to move. The Iron Rain and the Archangel positioned themselves in high orbit, engines humming low like the growl of sleeping beasts. From Earth's surface, the people watched as streaks of light crossed the sky, symbols of power they had only heard about in legends. Children pointed upward, their eyes wide with awe. Old veterans wept silently, whispering prayers for the return of the fleet they thought would never come. On the ground, General Ward stood on the fortress balcony, his hand over his heart as the shadows of the ships passed overhead. For 2 centuries, they called us ghosts, he murmured. Let them hear us now. The council fleet approached slowly, cautious, scanning everything. Juno let them come. She wanted them close enough to see the scars on Earth's surface, to feel the silence of a world they thought they buried. When the first alien dreadnought came into range, its captain hailed again, voice trembling beneath layers of protocol. Human fleet, this is your final warning. Stand down or be neutralized. Kara looked to Juno, waiting. The Admiral didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the image of that alien warship gliding across her screen, a monument to the arrogance that once destroyed her world. Then, quietly, she said, transmit this. Her words echoed across the dark. This is Earth command to the Galactic Council. We don't surrender. We remember. The alien ships hesitated, as if stunned by the weight of the voice that answered them. Then, the lead dreadnought fired. A single beam of white energy cut through the dark, slamming into the Vigilant Dawn's shields. The ship shook, alarms blaring. Direct hit, Kara shouted. Shields at 70%. Juno didn't flinch. Return fire. The Dawn's main cannon lit up, a line of brilliant blue slicing through space. It struck the alien vessel mid-hull, splitting it open like glass under heat. The explosion painted the stars gold and red. The crew watched in silence as the first council ship in centuries fell to human fire. In the council chamber light years away, chaos erupted. Every delegate shouted, every faction demanded action. Some cried for vengeance, others for retreat. They destroyed a dreadnought, one screamed. With a single shot. They should have stayed dead, shouted another. But the oldest among them, the Tarkhan elder who remembered the purge, only whispered, I warned you. They were never gone. They were waiting for the day you'd come too close. Back in Sol, the battle ignited. The sky turned into a storm of light as the council fleet swarmed Earth's orbit, firing in all directions. The human ships moved in perfect silence, their coordination unnerving, almost ghost-like. They didn't shout orders or cry for targets. Every move was instinct, every maneuver rehearsed in dreams of vengeance. The Archangel banked right, unleashing its plasma cannons through the flank of an alien cruiser. The Iron Rain intercepted missile fire, its shield array glowing like a burning halo. And at the center, the Vigilant Dawn pressed forward, her engines flaring brighter than the sun, cutting a path straight through the heart of the enemy formation. On the ground, the people of Earth gathered on rooftops and hillsides, watching the sky burn with streaks of light. It wasn't fear they felt, it was pride. For the first time in generations, the night wasn't dark. It was alive with the fire of their ancestors. General Ward stood among his soldiers, the ground shaking under the echoes of war. They've come for us, he said. And we're still standing. Inside the Vigilant Dawn, the bridge pulsed with energy. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the ship's systems strained under the onslaught. Kara shouted over the roar. Admiral, we're surrounded. Juno's hands flew across the console. Then there's nowhere left to run. She activated the secondary reactor, rerouting all remaining power into the forward cannons. Vigil Core, execute Sol Protocol. The AI hesitated for a moment. Admiral, that will drain the ship's main reactor. You may not survive the feedback. Then make it count, Juno said. The ship's core began to glow, its light bleeding through the metal walls like a pulse from the planet itself. All ships, fall back behind the Dawn's line. We're ending this. As the Council ships closed in, Juno stared at the planet below. We died once, she whispered, her voice trembling with both rage and love. We're not dying again. She pressed the final command key. The vigilant Dawn released its stored energy in a single blinding burst, a wave of pure power that rippled across the system. Every Council ship caught within its range shattered into dust and light, the shockwave spreading like the echo of thunder after lightning. From Earth, the explosion looked like sunrise, a golden flare that lit up the night and washed away the shadows of centuries. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The alien fleet was gone. Only debris drifted through the void, glowing faintly like the embers of a dying fire. The vigilant Dawn floated at the center, her hull cracked, her engines dim. Inside, the bridge was dark except for the faint red glow of emergency lights. Kara stumbled to her feet, coughing. Admiral, she called out. Juno sat slumped against the console, breathing shallowly, her eyes fixed on the view beyond the window. Earth shone below them, whole and bright beneath the stars. Status, she whispered. Enemy forces eliminated, the AI answered softly. Earth is secure. A faint smile touched her lips. Then we kept the promise. She leaned back, her vision blurring, her voice a whisper carried through static. Tell them, humanity endures. And with that, her hand slipped from the console, the glow of the screens reflecting the soft blue of Earth one last time. The news spread across the galaxy within days. The Council's fleet destroyed. The humans alive. The legends real. Worlds that had once cheered humanity's fall now trembled in silence. For every alien child born under the stars, a new story began to circulate. The story of the SOS that awakened the sleeping fleet, of the ghosts who returned to defend their home, of the world that refused to die. And far above Earth's clouds, the vigilant Dawn drifted quietly, scarred but unbroken, her lights dimming into the endless night. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, not as ghosts, but as the unyielding fire that the galaxy could never extinguish. The explosion's light faded slowly, spilling across the void like the final breath of a dying star. The battlefield above Earth had gone quiet, the silence so deep it felt sacred, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The debris of the Council fleet drifted like ash through the black, glowing fragments of ships that had once come to remind humanity of its place, now nothing more than dust beneath the shadow of their rebirth. The vigilant Dawn floated at the heart of it all, her hull cracked, her once bright armor scorched black from the power she had unleashed. Inside, the corridors were dark, the hum of the engines replaced by the low groan of cooling metal. Sparks flickered weakly along the command deck, casting light across faces smeared with blood and exhaustion. Kara Voss stumbled to her feet, clutching the railing as the ship listed slightly. Systems offline, she whispered. Her voice caught in her throat as she turned toward the captain's chair. Admiral. Juno Reeves sat slumped against the console, her uniform torn, her breathing shallow. The soft glow of the Earth reflected across her face, painting her in the blue of the world she had saved. She didn't look at Kara, not yet. Her eyes were fixed on the planet below, on the lights flickering along the surface where cities once stood. Is it over? She asked softly, her voice barely more than a breath. The eye's voice came through, quieter than ever. Enemy fleet destroyed. Orbit secure. Earth is free. Juno closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Then we did it, she whispered. After all this time, we came home. Kara rushed forward, kneeling beside her. You're bleeding, she said, pressing a hand against the Admiral's side where the uniform was dark with blood. We need medical now. The AI hesitated. Medbay unresponsive. Power levels at 3%. Life support failing. Kara's hands trembled. You can't die here. Not now. You brought us back. Juno smiled faintly, lifting a weak hand to touch Kara's arm. Listen to me, she said, her voice fragile but steady. This fleet isn't me. It's us. Every soul who chose silence over surrender. Every name they tried to erase. Humanity isn't one person. It's every heartbeat that refused to stop. She drew in a slow breath, her words coming softer now. Promise me, Kara. Promise me you'll lead them. Kara shook her head, tears spilling freely now. I can't replace you. You're not replacing me, Juno said. You're continuing us. The Eye's voice broke through again, gentler now. Admiral Reeves, your vitals are critical. Juno let out a quiet laugh, faint but real. You always did state the obvious, Vigil. Would you prefer I lie? No, she whispered, smiling. I prefer the truth. We earned it. The ship trembled as a small explosion rippled through one of the lower decks. Kara looked around in panic. Hull breaches in sections 3 through 6. Seal them off, Juno murmured. Save what's left of her. From orbit, the vigilant Dawn looked wounded but magnificent, a survivor of a war that should never have been fought. On the ground, the people of Earth looked up at the sky, watching the last sparks of the battle fade. General Ward stood with his soldiers on the broken plain, his eyes wet as he whispered, she did it. Around him, the world seemed to breathe again. Children laughed for the first time in years, people embraced beneath the falling dust of the enemy's remains, and across every outpost and colony still listening for hope, the message spread like wildfire, Oath stands. Back on the bridge, Kara looked out the viewport, her face illuminated by the planet's glow. She's beautiful, she said softly, not realizing Juno's eyes were still open, watching the same view. She always was, Juno murmured. We just forgot how to see her. Her voice began to fade now, her strength leaving her like sand slipping through fingers. When I left, I thought I'd never come back. I thought, maybe silence was our punishment. But now I know, she paused, drawing in one last trembling breath, it was our preparation. Her hand fell slowly from the console, her eyes still fixed on Earth. Kara caught her, her own body shaking as she whispered, Admiral, stay with me, please. But there was no answer. The AI spoke softly, almost mournfully. Admiral Juno Reeves, status, offline. Command transferred. The words hung heavy in the air, final and absolute. For a long time, no one moved. The crew stood in silence, heads bowed, their hearts breaking and healing all at once. Then, slowly, Kara straightened. She wiped the tears from her face and looked out at the stars. All ships, she said, her voice trembling but strong. This is Commander Voss. The Admiral is gone. But her mission isn't. We stand for her. We stand for Earth. Across the fleet, captains raised their hands to their hearts, the ancient Terran salute that hadn't been used in centuries. For Earth, they echoed, their voices uniting through the static. From the planet below, the people saw the human fleet ignite their engines once more, their light shimmering against the dark like 7 suns reborn. The ships moved together, forming a shield above their home, a silent vow written in light. Deep within the wreckage of the Council's fallen ships, automated distress beacons began to flicker, fragments of transmissions carrying across the void. The rest of the galaxy would hear soon. They would know what had happened in Sol. They would know the truth, that the humans they buried had risen again. Weeks later, when the fires had cooled and the debris drifted far beyond orbit, Kara stood on the same balcony where Juno had once watched the stars. The Earth below had begun to heal, fields being replanted, lights returning to the cities, laughter echoing through ruins. She held a small holochip in her hand, Juno's personal log. The final entry played softly, the Admiral's voice gentle, almost like a whisper from another life. If you're hearing this, it means we made it home. Don't let them fear us again. Let them remember us for the hope we carried, not the wars we fought. Because one day, the stars will need us again. And when they call, humanity will answer. We always do. Kara closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. Above her, the vigilant dawn drifted quietly, orbiting the world she had given everything to protect. Her name, once erased from the stars, was now written in fire and silence both. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, among the ruins of the Council's power, new whispers had begun to spread. Some called it prophecy, others called it fear. But those who had seen it with their own eyes called it truth. The humans had returned, and the stars would never be the same again. As night fell on Earth, Kara looked up at the heavens, her heart steady. "Rest now, Admiral," she whispered. "The dawn you promised is here." And far above, the vigilant dawn's engines flickered once, just once, as if answering her, before settling into the eternal rhythm of the stars. Humanity had endured. Humanity had prevailed. And in the endless silence of the cosmos, their story began again. The years that followed were quiet, too quiet for a galaxy that once trembled with war. After the battle for Sol, the Council fell into silence, its fleets withdrawn, its pride shattered by the return of the species it had once erased. For the first time in centuries, the stars whispered a different story. That humanity was not dead, not forgotten, not a myth. They had risen from their ashes, not to conquer, but to remind the universe what survival looked like. The vigilant dawn drifted above Earth like a guardian angel, her hull scarred, her engines cold, her command deck preserved exactly as it was on the night Juno Reeves gave her final command. The fleet still stood in orbit, not as weapons, but as symbols, proof that silence had never meant surrender. Below, the Earth healed. Forests grew through the bones of old cities, oceans turned blue again, and children played beneath the shadows of ships that once carried the weight of humanity's vengeance. Life had returned to the world that had nearly been lost. And yet, amid the peace, a kind of grief lingered, grief for the cost, grief for the silence that still echoed through the stars where Juno's voice had once been. Commander Kara Voss, now Admiral, stood on the same viewing platform where her mentor had stood years before, the stars reflecting in her eyes. The war had ended, but the mission had not. Every day, transmissions came from distant colonies, human survivors scattered across alien worlds, calling to the fleet that had become legend. "They all thought we were gone," she whispered, her voice carrying across the quiet bridge. "Now they know we never stopped watching." The AI, Vigil Core, responded softly, its tone slower now, almost weary. "There are still fragments of the old Council fleet beyond the Perseus Reach. Reckon suggests regrouping activity. Orders." Kara didn't look away from the stars. "Let them gather," she said. "They'll never cross Sol again." She turned toward the console and pressed a switch. A small holographic image flickered to life, Admiral Juno Reeves, recorded long before her final battle, smiling faintly as she spoke. "If we win, it won't be because of our weapons. It'll be because of what we remembered, who we were, what we stood for. Don't let them take that away again." Kara closed her eyes. "I won't," she whispered. She had kept every word Juno ever said like scripture, not out of duty, but out of love. She had led humanity through the rebuilding of its home, through the outreach to its lost colonies, through the cautious peace that now spread between species who once called them monsters. But peace never lasted forever. And somewhere in the darkness, she could feel it. The old fear creeping back into alien hearts, the quiet envy. The whispers of another alliance forming in the shadows. History was beginning to move again, and humanity's place in it was no longer that of a ghost. Far below, in the valley where Juno's ship first landed, a monument stood now. A simple stone tower carved with the names of every soldier, every engineer, every colonist who had kept the faith. At its center was a single inscription that no one dared to touch. "We answered the call." On quiet nights, the people would come and light candles around it, their flickering flames rising toward the sky like stars reborn. The children asked their parents if Admiral Reeves had really fought off an entire fleet by herself, and the parents smiled softly, saying, "She didn't fight alone." None of them ever did. In orbit, The human fleet had grown again. New ships joined the old ones, sleek, modern vessels built from the lessons of the past, carrying both soldiers and scientists, carrying not just vengeance but hope. They called it the New Dawn Fleet, a name chosen to honor the ship that started it all. Kara oversaw their construction personally, though she often found herself standing in the vigilant Dawn's silent bridge, listening to the hum of the inactive engines as if waiting for Juno's voice to return. "You'd hate how careful I've become," she murmured once, smiling through her sadness. "You'd have flown straight into danger by now." The eyes' lights flickered softly. "She would be proud, Admiral." Kara looked up, eyes glistening. "I hope so." Then, one evening, while reviewing long-range sensor data, Kara noticed something strange. A faint transmission, weak, old, but unmistakably human. The frequency was ancient, matching Earth's pre-purge broadcast codes. She leaned forward, heart racing. "Vigil, isolate that signal." "Working, signal found." "Location, Andromeda Outpost 12. Kara blinked. "That's outside our territory." The eyes' tone grew somber. "Admiral, the signal reads as Terran. It bears the insignia of Earth Command." For a long moment, Kara said nothing. Then a small, almost disbelieving smile crossed her face. "They are still out there," she whispered. "More of us." That night, she stood before the fleet assembly, her voice carried through every ship in orbit, through every colony comline that could hear her. "We thought we were alone when we woke," she said. "We thought humanity had been reduced to a memory. But we were wrong. There are still echoes of us across the stars, waiting for someone to find them. We will find them. We'll bring them home." Her voice grew stronger, filled with the same fierce warmth Juno once carried. The galaxy believed silence meant death. They forgot what silence means to us. It means patience. It means survival. It means waiting for the right moment to rise again. That moment is now. This is the next chapter of humanity's story. The Council tried to erase us. Instead, they wrote our beginning. The fleets roared to life as engines ignited, their lights blazing like dawn across the heavens. From the surface, people looked up and cheered, the sound carrying over oceans and ruins, through the forests and mountains of a reborn Earth. The vigilant Dawn led the formation, her ancient engines sparking back to life one last time, her hull glowing like it remembered the fire of battle. Kara stood at her helm, her heart heavy but strong. "Juno," she whispered into the dark, "we're carrying your light further now." As the ships vanished into hyperspace, streaking toward the distant galaxy where the new signal awaited, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer brighter, as if bowing to the return of those who had once vanished into the void. The message of Earth spread once again, not through war or vengeance, but through something far more powerful: survival, unity, and the promise that humanity would never again be forgotten. And so, the legend of the SOS that awakened the secret fleet became the heartbeat of a new age. Children across the galaxy would grow up hearing the story of the admiral who answered a call from the dark, of the fleet that rose from dust to defend a dying world, of the people who turned silence into strength. They would look to the stars and whisper with pride and awe, "Humanity endures."